Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Partnerships That Work When Tackling Pests and Weeds. My name is Anna Pimenta. For the ones that don't know me, I am the Landcare Development Coordinator with Landcare Victoria. I want to start by acknowledging the important work that volunteers like yourselves contribute every day in Landcare, being that around governance, planting trees, or controlling weeds and pests. So this topic was chosen because there's really no single group that can tackle environmental challenges alone. Engagement and partnerships are what turn small local efforts into coordinated landscape scale impact. And this will be demonstrated today by some of our inspiring case studies. Today's session won't go into detailed information about a particular pest or weed, but we do have other past webinars that cover more specific pests or weeds topics in greater detail. So the recordings of these webinars can be found in our website along with some resources. So please have a look. There's also some other great topics in there too. Before we start, we'd like to pay our respects to the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we are meeting today. Landcare Victoria recognises the ongoing role of traditional owners in caring for land, water and wildlife, and acknowledges the deep connection that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples have to the country. I would also like to personally acknowledge the Gunai Kunai peoples, the land I am working on today here in Gippsland, and I pay my respect to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples with us today. And just some quick housekeeping before we get stuck into it. So first, please don't feel like you need to write everything down. So a recording of this session and the presentation slides and any other relevant resources or links will be sent to all registrants. Please note that all participants' microphones are muted. We will be stopping briefly after each section to answer questions. We'll have about 5 minutes after each section for questions and also at the end. So please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen at any time to pose a question. We do have a lot to cover tonight, so if you have a question that goes unanswered or something you'd like to follow up on, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. And now for some quick introductions before we start. So as I mentioned, I am Anna Pimenta and I am here on behalf of Landcare Victoria. I am joined tonight by Sarah Vella. She's our communications officer and she'll be assisting us answering some questions and running this session as well. I am pleased to present you our speakers for tonight. So we from the Project Platypus, we have up at the Upper Wimmera catchment, we have Lachlan McIntyre. So Lachlan has been working for Landcare for quite some time, and he's the field operations manager at Project Platypus. Lachlan will be sharing with us the inspiring journey about a specific project that has been running for a number of years through various sources of funding and many partnerships along the way. Next, from East Gippsland Landcare Network, from the other side of Victoria, we are pleased to have Michelle Shug. She's the network's Landcare facilitator and a very passionate Landcarer. Michelle will showcase how from little things, big things grow, how a small project with passionate people allowed for meaningful partnerships and connections that just keep growing. And we've saved a really important voice for the end for tonight's session. We're really lucky to have Johnny Murray at the Deputy Chair for the Dudra Duggal Aboriginal Corporation, or DDAC. Johnny has kindly accepted this invitation to speak about what caring for country means, our traditional control methods for pests and weeds work, and share his experience on some of the strategies on how can Landcare better engage and connect with traditional owners. With Johnny tonight, we also have Richard McTurnan, the General Manager of DDAC, and a passionate Landcarer that has been working for over 20 years with Indigenous groups and peoples through from cultural burns to protecting turtles from foxes. So with all introductions made, it is time to hand this screen to Lachlan. So Lachlan, when you're ready, I can stop sharing my screen.
Yep, I'm just trying to share my screen now. I'll share that application. And I'll start this. Give me a minute. So, can people hear me okay? I think. Yeah, well, my name's Lachlan McIntyre. I've worked with Project Platypus for about be 13, 14 years now. I'll give Elia Purtle a plug, our local land care facilitator. She does a lot of, I guess, bridging the gap between Project Platypus and land care groups and does a great job as our facilitator. I'm going to talk specifically about our land care group to the east of Stawell called Crowlands Warwick Land Care, and one of their projects reviving Mount Cole Creek, which is a small contributory to the upper Wimmera into the Wimmera River system. As you can see in the map here, you can sort of see the ranges out to the east. Warwick's a small little town of just literally a few hundred people, probably only a couple hundred people. There's two waterways in this picture, but basically the Mount Cole Creek, we've done a project about 10 kilometres along the spring-fed creek. The reason we've chosen this area is because we see it as one of the most likely spots we could possibly reintroduce platypus to the area, and there's also some water holes we're still testing to see if there's platypus still in the upper Wimmera. There's lots of remnant vegetation corridors, as you can see in the photo. And I'll go into the other pictures here just to give you an idea of the land tenure. So where we are in the Upper Wimmera, 84% of our land is owned by private land, is under private land management. So this project specifically engaged about 20 plus landholders, 7 of which were absentee. And there's quite a mixture of sort of large scale farmers and hobby farmers and viticulture and whatnot. But around the township, there's just a lot of small 10 to 20, 30 acre properties. There's blue gum plantations as well, so there's quite a mix of people in there. To give you an idea of, I guess, what the land care group was doing years ago with their Vic Land Care grants, I was just focusing on 2 or 3 landholders that owned most of these sort of leased areas along the creek, controlling blackberry and gorse. And with their land care grants, they just keep sort of, trickling through, doing activities throughout the years. And in 2017, we managed to get some Vic Gorse task force funding, which allowed us to run some community events for the group and I guess reinvigorate what was an increasing population. We had a few tree changers coming out, buying cheaper properties and building some houses. So we saw it as an opportunity to probably get the people brought back into a story of, I guess, about the Mount Cole Creek and share some of the love, I guess, the locals, the long-term locals had for the creek. In 20, around the sort of 2019-20 mark, Landcare continued their $10,000 to $15,000 grant fundings and got some more, I guess, funding from Wimmera CMA in the riparian funding to try and engage landholders that weren't already in Landcare to try and increase their membership. And this sort of bridged a lot of those gaps that were happening from past projects. You can sort of see the expansion of work there. Project Platypus, I guess, using their leverage and their partnerships with the Ararat Rural City Council, managed to direct some of the roadside weed funding to extend the projects away from the control works away from the creek and onto the roadsides, where some of those larger sort of pest plants were harboring and hanging out and still causing sort of seed banks to happen to increase. In 2023, we had was that the election year? I think we had some money come in from the federal government for the Healthy Rivers to, I guess, do some more works along another area of the creek there. You can sort of see. This also gave us some money for re-veg. It was quite a large grant of around $100,000 we had to spend over a couple of years. And also some community events and some feasibility studies around habitat pools and some eDNA testing. And that sort of stuff helped with getting the community back involved as well. And then Landcare sort of expanded its works, I guess, over these more recent years up into these little sort of tributaries that feed into the Mount Cole Creek system. There's also been some money funded through DECA under the Good Neighbour funding to do some little patches of reserve that they're in management of. So you can sort of see up here, the northern part of the project area and down to the south, but also up in the Mount Cole Creek when the water came out of the reserve. So I guess working together, we get more positive results. This is a picture of the Mount Cole Creek, and a lot of the shrubs and the understory you see along this creek here, running around the photo, is actually gorse and blackberry. So when I go to the next photo of where it is now, it looks quite bare. I know it looks probably worse off than what it did in the last photo, but a lot of those really bad pest species have gone, and we see sort of the creek repairing itself, and there's been some re-veg and some good regen coming back along this creek line. So I guess Project Platypus works in that space of sort of cross tenure. So we sort of bridge that gap between agencies and private landholders and land care groups. And in that, I guess we try and work out what each body sort of needs from each other. So agencies need, I guess, private landholders to better understand and appreciate invasive plant and animal issues, and to be motivated to undertake good invasive plant and animal management on private land. And private landholders, land care, I guess we're talking about their need from agencies, support to undertake good pest management on private land, training, ideally, ID and upskilling, education, I guess, around management techniques and better ways to manage their pest species, and to get better funding and support. That's something which is always could be used, I guess, when we're doing in pest species management. And resources and equipment to complete the task. A lot of our land care groups need like spray trailers and even like just I guess other like hand tools and different ways to spray. I guess the way Project Platypus helps bridge that gap between agencies and land care is to hold this with been convening an upper rim invasive plant and animal committee meeting that Project Platypus represents on behalf of land care. And then we have all these different agencies, local government, other sort of land managers, Trust for Nature, land care, sometimes friends of. We work probably more closely with Agriculture Victoria to work around some of those pest species. And that's where a lot of the money is directed for with grants through different classification of weeds in our catchment. The barriers, I guess, for doing this work is changing agency staff, and I know that's not any sort of dig at anyone, but short funding, secondments, changing in, I guess, long-term funding from different election cycles, and that we see a large changing turnover of staff. Sporadic and reduced funding for land care groups, so at times the funding just isn't there, or it's too competitive. So we see it's improved in recent years, the access of funding for land care groups. That's something which has become a little bit better. We find the CalPAC quite dysfunctional. It leaves a lot of the responsibility onto land care, I guess, to follow up a lot of these different pest species which aren't managed under biosecurity anymore. And again, it's no dig, it's just where the money's at. And I think it's sort of we have to question around the functionality of that legislation and what it really can achieve. And disaster events and pandemics. So of course, when there's a fire and stuff, we'll lose the opportunity to maybe engage communities through needing time to recover. In the pandemic, had everyone sort of stuck in the house. The pandemic, both are a bit of an interesting one because they also come up in what helped. I'll talk about that in a minute. So a lot of leveraging. So when we use funding, we try and talk to the next body. So when we have land care grants, we try and lever from those activities into the CMA funding. And the same thing, we lever from the CMA funding into that IPA committee. We talk about the roadsides and get the Shire involved. Then we even write into grants, I guess, all that work that's happened in the past, which isn't uncommon for people to then write into other bigger grants that might be available, like the Murray-Darling grant funding. Regular engagement in events and field activities is really important to keep the community motivated and keep them educated about what's going on. Long-term commitment from Project Platypus staff and the land care group. So again, people that take those executive roles for multiple years, keeping the knowledge there, I guess, and passing it on, having a bit of succession planning really helps. And Project Platypus as well, we've managed to secure more funding for our staff to be around longer term, which helps with those, because dealing with pest species takes multiple years. Disaster response funding. So again, I've talked about the pandemic and stuff before. Quite often there's a bit of a stimulation in funding that gets handed out with response. So we've seen a little bit of money come down with our recent fires. During the pandemic, we had extra crews that were employed through parks and the CMA as well. And having a long-term vision for the creek, we see lots of little projects start and stop and sort of go for 2 or 3 years, but having that idea of restoring the creek long term has given the community real buy-in and to sort of really own the project. And we've seen an expansion of the land care group, which has really helped. So again, around those sort of points there, I think probably that regular engagement, events, education, and giving the community a real focus for what they're doing long term. And to recap, I guess why it's important to work in partnerships is to most of our land is 84% owned by private in the Upper Wimmera, so private landholders has a chance have a chance to notice things first. It alleviates budget restraints for both private and public landholders. The scale of on-ground work is often very large and needs to be sort of scaled. So having that vision long term and working out where you need to maybe focus the money at that time is really important to have. Oops, I've gone out of the way there. Sorry there, I've lost that last part. I was going pretty well, last 2 points. The very end, where am I? It's just to remind myself, really. Local values. Where are we? We have a shared responsibility. So again, working in partnership and sharing that load is really important. And working together, we can achieve a whole lot more. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll open it up to questions.
Thanks, Lachlan. That was good timing. So we've got a couple of questions for you here so far.
Yep.
So one is from Gerhard Gracer. Hope I'm spelling that right. So while pests and invasive species often become the default, has been there much education and work undertaken to provide incentives to nurture native grasses and biodiverse planting of shelter belts? And if you did that, was that done?
Yeah, so I guess we still get some queries for shelter bouts. A lot of the things that don't get those activities running is probably still budget restraints and the money involved. So shelter bouts quite often aren't in riparian zones, so they need like a bit of fencing and some of those commitments around people not stocking. But we still do get the odd one now and then. Grasslands, a lot of that area is actually in production around, it's a bit of cropping there, but more grazing. There's some good pastures in the area. We're doing a lot of education around, I guess, grassland restoration and trying to keep, our native species in. But it's definitely an area we can always work on. As to what helps that, I think if I think to a different area, Jaluka Landcare's got a grasslands project. So they've actually found a couple of people really passionate about grasslands that have given up some land to grow certain species for seed collection. And there's got a bit of a seed bank happening now for a few different species of native grasses. We're hoping to share that across our land care network. So I guess trying to get that's probably become more of an opportunity that there was some good intact grasslands to get underway with. So there's some different ideas there. I hope I've answered the question.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good answer, Lachlan. I've got another one from Diana. How much work is being done to ensure Vic roads deal with their weeds?
That's a good question. So we get really good buy-in from our local governments because we sort of we know the officers that are running those roadside pest programs. Look, Vic Roads, I've worked with them in the past. It's probably had, let me think. So they had a restructure a little while back. We find that they probably haven't got the officers covering, their officers, I guess, covering larger areas. So in that area alone, there's no Vic roads that are sort of causing an issue. In other areas, I guess, maybe it's just not a real focus to them. I guess I'll probably look back at the functionality of the Kelp Act. So we see a lot of response from Vic roads around prohibited classified species like serrated tussock where we are. But the idea of doing, say, work around, I don't know, bridal creeper or St. John's or Patterson's curse doesn't seem to happen as easily. The way we get around that is we actually get people to do the snap, send, solve and to put their queries in, not through word of mouth, but actually like do it through the processes of Vic roads and stuff. We find that initiates a bit of a process response and we see a better response to, I guess, Vic roads, weeds that way. That might help.
Yeah, thanks, Lachlan. So, got time for a couple of more
Yep.
questions. What proportion of landholders and landcare members are, sorry, what proportion of landholders and landcare members, and what engagement activities did you do to engage non-members along the creek?
Yeah, so I think when we sort of had the land care group, it usually operates in a couple of like what we call community champions. So a couple there that had a historic family, the Buckinghams, Daniel and Sally Buckingham have ran that land care group and reinvigorated it for a few years. Before that, the land care members probably ran it, two or three people ran it for a good 10 plus years, 10 to 15 years, who were also our board members for Project Platypus. So I've got it. If you know Warwick, they had a bit of this is a bit of a side thing, but there was a mystery person putting out little minion characters as letterboxes on people's. So people were waking up with these letterboxes appearing, and that sort of got the town talking a bit. Someone had an idea of a way to connect the town a bit, so they did that. Then at the next community event, people turned up, so to the Christmas barbecue or whatever. Um, I suspect it's Daniel. I'm not sure. He would deny it. But I think those sort of things. So someone, I guess, thinking of a different way to engage these new people that weren't sharing a cup of tea or turning up to the hall events. Um, we had our presentation was very heavily focused around the platypus and the historic sightings of that. So everyone was really intrigued by a species that they might be able to, help to maybe reinstall. They had this, 20, 30 meters sometimes of waterway, so they could see their little part being played. Um, yeah, and I guess probably being consistent would be the other one. So Daniel and Sally, like, Daniel got out, I think, for the first year and just did some of the older people or people who couldn't do their own work, just got in there and did it for them and showed them, that kind of stuff. And then it sort of led on from there. We still have a lot of people that don't get involved with the physical side of the work, but they're definitely more involved in the community in other ways. And whether they can't get into the physical side for one thing, they might have taken up other roles in land care or community groups. So yeah, I think there's a really probably consistency, um, finding a common theme that people like, and quite often, our waterways and our native areas are a really good place to start, especially for people that move out to these areas.
Yeah.
So might help.
Yeah. Last one, Lachlan. So have you involved schools in the project?
In this one, I think with the eDNA testing was something we could get them involved with. Getting them spraying weeds through blackberry and gorse probably isn't something school kids want to do. Look, kids attended the community event, but there's no school based in Warwick, so it's not a large sort of young person student area. We've got other work happening in Stall and other areas with junior land care. So yeah, we are getting kids involved, but we're getting kids involved through our School Glider project. So we're doing some night surveys. I guess this is different from the Mount Coal Creek project, but we're doing night surveys with thermals. We've done a couple of open days where kids get to actually handle critters with some of the wildlife businesses in the area. Lots of activities and stuff like that. Aaliyah does some engagement with school groups doing sort of a modified habitat hectare survey thing where the kids get to go out and probably look at their canopies and their square meters of ground a little bit differently. So yeah, we do got some innovative things going on. Yeah, and we're getting, I guess that's opening more and more. So just today we've had 3 or 4 emails from very keen teachers working on their holidays, looking at activities for the next term. We're getting probably 3 or 4 queries from Melbourne metropolitan-based schools each year, to do sort of a whole day activities around the Grampians, looking at they actually want to do pest management, so it's a bit different, but but the habitat hectare sort of stuff as well. So yeah, we're looking at that
Mm.
space. It's definitely growing.
Thanks, Lachlan. I guess yeah, the name of the group really helps. Everyone loves platypuses,
Yeah, it's
and
it. It's a good
kids
name.
really love it.
Good
All right,
branding.
thanks, Julie and Emma, for those last couple of questions. So we're now on time for Michelle's presentation from the East Gippsland Landcare Network. Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Lachlan. Lachlan.
Mute. There we go. Okay. And that worked too. Good. Okay, so my presentation is coming from the sort of East Gippsland area, Gunnar Kuna country I'm speaking to you from tonight. So the East Gippsland Land Care Network, by way of a bit of background, covers part of the East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority area, including Dargo up in the northwest, right up into Galantepe in the north, and stretching from the Wellington Shire in the west to Lakes Entrance in the east. We've got 26 land care groups in the network, and 2 facilitators. So we sort of split the groups between us, but we certainly do a lot of collaborating as well. One thing all of our member groups have in common is concerns about pests, plants and animals. And as such, we do have a dedicated pest, plant and animal committee that sits within the East Gippsland Land Care Network. That was started up by a couple of the committee members several years ago. And there are now 6 people who basically coordinate the activities around pest, plant and animal issues. So they might coordinate an African lovegrass program that we're doing at the moment. There's a group tackling a very small infestation of fireweed. And that group coordinates a lot of those activities. So there's a few members of the committee there at the moment, and that was taken at the recent field days. They consist of members of our general land care groups as well, so you don't have to be part of the committee to be part of this group. And their focus is increasing awareness of pest, plants and animals, responding to specific requests for workshops and information, running pest and weed focused projects, and keeping up to date with current pest, plant and animal control methods and research. They're very energetic and very passionate about their little niche in our network. And they turn up to every meeting, so it's fantastic. So down to the field days. So we're all still coming down after a bit of a high. It was only on last Friday and Saturday. So this time last week, we'd just finished bump in and we were all exhausted, but fired up, ready for the next day. A bit of background to the field days. So the East Gippsland Field Days is held each April down here at the Bairnsdale Aerodrome, arguably either the hottest or the wettest or the windiest month of the year in East Gippsland. This year we got windy. Last year it was hot. It's run by the Lindelow Lions Club, and the event's been running for well over 20 years now. The Lions Club has a whole bunch of other community groups that volunteer their time to help them run the event, and all the profits from the event are distributed back through those volunteer groups to the local community. So it's sort of a wonderful example of partnerships even before you start talking about pest, plants and animals. Our involvement with it actually started last year, 3 weeks before the event. There was a request made from the organisers of the event, a little bit frantic because this huge huge aeroplane hangar that you can see in front of you was going to be empty, and it sort of sat sort of right on the edge of the main activity centre of the field days. So they approached the East Gippsland CMA and said, "Can you come up with something? Do you think you could fill a hangar?" And so our local regional land care coordinator, Crystal, gave me a call and said, "What do you think? Can we do something?" So with 3 weeks, we pulled something together, got in touch with everybody that we could think of, pest, plant and animal focus. And what you see on that photo on the left-hand side is last year's event. So we filled up the middle of the hangar with a bit of a display of native vegetation. We didn't bring any weeds in because we didn't want to leave weed seed laying around. We managed to get Agriculture Victoria's vertebrate pests team along, and they brought a taxidermied fox and a taxidermied wild boar and their pig baiting station. So that was all part of the display. My father-in-law's trophy deer head was also in there. It was good to see that put to good use. And we ended up with quite a few partners. not a huge number, but enough to make a bit of an impact in that hangar. And it was a hot day last year, so we had virtually the only shade on the site. So people came in, and it was incredibly busy. We also had some children's activities set up to distract the children while we tried to talk to their parents as they went past. So yeah, last year's was a bit scratched together, but we were really pleased with the end result, and all the partners that we had managed to get together with us agreed that they'd like to come along next year. So those partners last year included BirdLife East Gippsland, Far East Victoria Landcare Network, the Landcare groups from the Swift Creek, Ensay and High Country area. We had the Serrata Tussock Working Group there, Victorian Agriculture's Vertebrate Pest Group, and a number of other sort of displays that our Pest, Plant and Animal Committee put together around African lovegrass and rabbits. So the next, the following year, we put together some sort of lists of partners who'd been there before and then started expanding and looking at the people that we were already working with in the Landcare space and thinking, okay, could we get them involved? We started fairly early in the piece, and ended up with a much larger group of people. So then we decided that we'd apply for some Partnerships Against Pests funding, and we were urged to do that by the Victorian Agriculture team that were there. They said, why don't you apply for some funding through this process and we can expand this whole pest, plant and animal concept. So, that was sort of the start of the team working together to make the next couple of years happen. The stalls around the edge this year, we filled up with a whole bunch of extra partners. So we have the Victorian Rabbit Action Network there, the Victorian Gorse Group were there, Trust for Nature joined us, another part of DECO with the Good Neighbour program joined us because they deal with the sort of interface between private and public land and the weeds, pests and weeds issues. And this is, I suppose, an example of cooperation. You might have noticed the use of all the C words. That was just me getting on a bit of a roll with the C words. But one thing about the aeroplane hangar was it's heritage listed, so we weren't allowed to do anything to it. You couldn't stick anything on the walls. You couldn't actually do anything that might change the integrity of the structure. Not that we were planning on doing anything major. But even coming down to hanging the banner required sort of quite some ingenuity to get it up there. That was a lot of fun. The first year sort of really initiated our relationships with Landcare and our potential partners in the battle against pests, plants and animals. The most valuable outcome wasn't so much the interaction with the public, which was great, but it was the opportunity for face-to-face interactions and discussions with the various agencies and organisations who were working in this hangar with us. A lot of the time, our only communications had been through either emails or quick phone calls. And to actually meet people face-to-face and have an opportunity to discuss issues and to talk about who's doing what where and find out what their dog's name is and all that stuff that, creates a relationship, not just about work, but about, it just makes it a lot easier, I suppose, a lot more sort of personal. So we ended up putting together a very comprehensive application. We decided to include some speakers as part of the program and arranged a speakers tent and all the equipment to seat about 20 people. We weren't expecting huge crowds. And as opposed to last year, we had to pay for the site. So the funding was certainly helpful in being able to do that and to be able to upgrade some of our display materials, because we knew we couldn't attach things to the walls. So we had to come up with some way of displaying materials that weren't just sitting on a table. So that was a interesting thing. Here's a couple of photos of the connections being made. So it was, probably, definitely the best outcome from the event, even though essentially it was aimed towards the public. This sort of unexpected coming together of different agencies and different people, all with a common passion. Probably the highlight of this year's windy event was when our speakers tent got mauled by the wind. And at the end of the first day, luckily there weren't a whole bunch of people sitting in it. At the end of the first day, we had to pull it down and decide then what to do with it. So in that photo, we've got Lance from the serrated tussock group. We've got Diana from the gorse group. We've got pest, plant and animal members. We've got Mel from DECA, the Good Neighbour program. Everyone just got up and helped. It was amazing. So these relationships were just so easy. There was no thought that it wasn't my job or that's not something that I'm here to do. Everyone just got, right, let's get this thing. What are we going to do with it? Where are we going to put it? People got out tape measures and folded panels and put it all together, and then we walked it in to the hangar, which was a good side of having such a huge space, rearranged everybody's tables and stalls and put the gazebo into the corner. And it was just amazing to watch. It just happened. All these people working together who were essentially there to talk about pest, plants and animals, and we were all so invested in it that everyone just got in and made sure that it happened, and it was a really sort of fantastic thing. All these people are very keen to join us again next year, and we've already sort of sent out an email asking our partners from afar to join us in a Zoom meeting if they've got time, but if not, to send us their positive and negative feedback so that we can talk about it in a debrief, which we've got scheduled for the end of next week. So it was sort of a great couple of days. And we're just trying to think what I haven't told you yet. The 6 presentations that we had. So we kept it fairly small. There was a lot of other stuff going on site. There's music and motorbikes and things like that we had to try and fit in between the noise coming from other areas. But we ended up with 6 presentations that were well attended. And we also had the kids' activities again this year, which was very popular. It wasn't actually designed to attract children to the tent because there was plenty of other kids stuff going. It was to provide somewhere for the adults to park their kids while they engaged in discussion, and that was a really useful thing because they were right there in the middle of all the stall holders so that parents could keep an eye on them, and they made nature wands and stenciled calico bags. So that was a really excellent outcome. This year's event was quieter than last year because somehow or other we got a bit blocked off from the main food area that we were right on the edge of last year. But we all agreed that even though not as many people went through our displays, we actually had time to engage with people and to find out about their properties and what they were interested in and actually have discussions with them rather than as in last year when it was really hot, everyone came in for the shade and there was just people everywhere and you really didn't have time to engage. So one of the lessons was it's not so much about the quantity of people that come through, but the quality. Last year, simple example, we got 3 new members. This year we got 20 people who wanted to join the various land care groups in the region. And a lot of inquiries to all of our different stallholders. So really an excellent outcome. One of the other outcomes that's come with being able to talk face to face with some of our partners is talking about possible sort of funding partnerships and how we can get together to create events that are going to benefit both our members and these other agencies, for example, the Gorse Group and the Serrated Tussock Group. We're sort of talking to them about how we might organise an emerging weeds program in our area, because neither of those 2 weeds are a major problem, but we certainly don't want to let them get away. And it's very easy to sort of focus on all the stuff that's a big problem, but if you don't keep an eye on the things that are sneaking in around the edges, then they can turn into big problems as well. So after we'd packed up on the Saturday, we had about half an hour before they would allow us to bring our vehicles in to remove all our stuff. So all of us there, all the stallholders who were still there and the Pest, Plant and Animal Committee, we sat in a circle and had a really good chat straight after the event and talked about all the really good aspects and the things that could be better, some of the things that were disastrous, like having the gazebo outside in the wind. And I think I'm really looking forward to next year's event. Everyone's really excited about who else we can invite and what else we can do. And like I said, we're just still coming down off the high. Lots of adrenaline going on. So, yeah, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so it seems to me that listening to you and listening to Lachlan, that we, like in today's age, we're so connected to technology and the way we meet, even through this webinar, it's just all online, or through Zoom meetings or Teams meetings or, emails. But it just seems that you get such good results with face-to-face events and really taking the time to show the amazing work and that you care and that everyone cares, and then bringing that community together for a common good or common problem. I think that's what is showing from both of your presentations, that we kind of need to go back to the old way of doing things to get some really good, meaningful partnerships and long-lasting partnerships. So I've got a couple of questions. Oh, and also on the emerging weeds, just letting you know that might be a topic that for our next webinar that I've also thought that would be quite a good one. So keen to hear how you go with that one. But I've got a question here from Emma about if the local schools or any youth groups got involved, other than, I guess, the parents that got involved through the being there with their kids. But was there any specific activity for the young groups or
This none of this. I think the Lindenau South Primary School was one of the volunteer groups, and I'm not sure what their role was generally in the field days. There was certainly a lot of young people involved in different aspects. So Federation Uni and the TAFE were there with some of their students participating. They had trainee shearers doing things in the shearing display. There were certainly a lot of activities to engage young people, but not necessarily land care related. So, yeah, that's something that we might look at, because we do have quite a team of members who are related to some of our pest, plant and animal committee, and they were the ones manning the kids' table, and they just loved it. They just sort of spent all weekend interacting with the kids. So perhaps something that's sort of a little bit more focused towards land care and educational, but really we were just aiming to provide distraction, really.
Yeah.
So that the kids weren't dragging their parents away when we were having a conversation. Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. Also, just another quick question. Well, hopefully I can make it quick, but Gerhard is asking if there's been any other forums or events that encourage and embrace joint projects other than this event. Is there any other ones that you do throughout the year?
Nearly everything is
Yeah.
a partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, nearly everything. We do a lot of work with the Gippsland Agriculture Group. We do a lot of work with the Shire because most of the groups are working on Shire land, and they're great partners. So nearly every project and everything that any of the groups do involves partnerships of some sort.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how often does the group meet, the subcommittee? I guess that's what Gerard is referring to.
They don't have a sort of scheduled meeting, so it's really in response to requests or need.
Okay.
So in the lead up to the field days, there was lots of meetings. We'll probably have a bit of a break now, but they've got a few other things on the go as well, in particular with the African lovegrass. So they'll be meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Michelle, and please feel free to keep putting some questions there. If yeah, both you, Michelle, and Lachlan should be able to see these questions coming through if you want to answer them. But now it's time to go to Johnny Murray from the Dura Dago. Is he okay to share your screen, Johnny? We also have Richard McTurnan in the background there. If you feel like saying something, Richard, please do, or at the end as well. And thanks so much, Johnny, for accepting this invitation. It's a pleasure to have you.
How's that volume? Can you hear me all right?
We can. We're all good.
Yeah, all right, awesome. So, click here. So yeah, my presentation tonight's on working with traditional owners and caring for country and engagement with Landcare Victoria. So yeah, my name's Johnny Murray. I'm here on behalf of the Durradagal Aboriginal Corporation. What's going on here? So yeah, first up, I want to start, like by acknowledging country. Just want to, pay respects to all my old people, past and present, and just want to acknowledge the lands that everyone else is joining us from. For me, I'm in Albury today at home here in Radri country, but yeah, just want to acknowledge all the old people, past, present, and acknowledge everyone in the meeting today. So my talk tonight is about, the significance of working with traditional owners and when it comes to engagement, how traditional owners, including fire, can guide modern land management. And, for me, this isn't about sugarcoating in the past. It's about recognising that Aboriginal people have cared for country for thousands of years through science and deep ecological understanding, and that, we are one with country. So hopefully that shines through tonight's presentation. But so why traditional owner partnerships matter? Because they hold the long-term ecological knowledge. So knowledge built over thousands of years, passed on from generation to generation, years of observation, land management practices, but understanding of plant behaviour, seasonal cycles, soil health, and animal movement, ability to read subtle signs in country that Western science often overlooks. And on top of that, I'll just add that, working and walking on country, and having that intimate relationship with country, puts us in, good stead to be able to provide expert advice when it comes to ecological knowledge and living what we preach. So the connection to land care is about reconnection to land and water management for TOs, support of traditional practice, land care connections, reconciliation in joint projects, economic benefits for traditional owners through delivering of workshops. And what that means is about, I think through the last two presentations, we talk about the significance and importance of relationships, and, working together and building relationships is the way forward on how we can all care for country and ensure that, the land's going to be in good shape for future generations and, for our young people coming through. So again, why traditional owner partnerships matter. For land care community, they want to meet traditional owners, learn about our culture, understand the cultural landscape, learn traditional practices, and learn alternative methods to look after land. And again, that's about having conversations, meeting out on country, and connecting with the environment and landscape in order to learn country and to be able to care for it. It's also about developing those long-lasting relationships and important friendships, traditional owner assistance with funding applications and letters of support. Again, I know Dura Dargol and Richard and my mum and my uncles, my family in particular, have got a long-standing relationship with the land care groups in the northeast here of Victoria, and and all that comes down to is relationship building and having cups of tea. I think you can learn a lot over having a cup of tea with someone. So don't underestimate the power of putting the kettle on or putting the billy on the fire and having a cup of tea with someone. I think you'll find that's a good way of building relationships. But when it comes to traditional owners and us bringing a holistic approach, Western Weed Management Office focuses on removal, where traditional knowledge focuses on restoring balance. They're not looking at things in isolation. So some of the barriers that we can face, the land care facilitators initially worried about adding further workloads to traditional owners' already busy schedule, which is true. A lot of the time, traditional owners or people with knowledge, get bombarded with requests and things like that, and which is understandable. But outside of the requests that we get, we've got other things such as family and other work commitments. So that's sometimes the barriers, and to be able to, have impacts on projects in a timely manner. But some of the other barriers, people don't know who to talk to, and that's the importance of getting involved with Aboriginal communities. So what I often tell people, a good way to meet your local community is to attend their events, or things like NAIDOC Reconciliation Week is a good way to go and join in, with events and meet people. The best thing about that is going to Aboriginal communities and work and supporting traditional owners, when we don't actually want something from them. So and then that next point, not sure how to involve traditional owners. So everything for me comes back to that relationship building, and like I said, having a cup of tea with someone can ignite a lifelong relationship. So if you can have that relationship with someone and be genuine with your intentions, you can go a long way then to working with and meeting traditional owners, and then that will overcome those barriers of not knowing who to talk to, and then not being sure how to involve traditional owners. But I will say that anything that involves working with country and traditional land management, the traditional owners need to be at the table. So yeah, what collaboration looks like in practice, for traditional land managed practice. So traditional owners can guide, which plants are culturally significant, which areas should not be disturbed, how to remove weeds without damaging native species. So joint planning sessions, mapping cultural sites, identifying priority weed areas, understanding seasonal indicators. So for us, there are many seasonal indicators which tell us when is the right time to burn, when the right time to plant, when it's the right time to harvest. So having that intimate knowledge of country and then being able to share it is very important. So then leads into cultural burns, led by traditional owners, supported by land care, used to restore native grasslands and reduce weeds. And when you participate in cultural burns and it is led by traditional owners, that's what the ultimate goal is. That's that self-determination model, and it's that positive model that we want, getting mob back out on country, practicing the practices that have been in place for a long time. And then from there, we've got monitoring and future planning. So again, as I speak through this, it just reinforces that connection of understanding, that importance of relationships, and then being able to work together. So everyone, bringing their strengths together in order to be able to care for country. So traditional approaches to weed management. So it's important to know weeds and pests are largely post-colonisation problems. Traditionally, our ancestors managed the landscape in a way that prevented the conditions that weeds now thrive in today. So using fire to control unwanted plants, fire is one of the oldest and most sophisticated tools in Aboriginal land management. So traditional fire was cool, low and slow. It was applied seasonally, not reactively. It targeted specific vegetation types. It prevented thick undergrowth where weeds now thrive, and encouraged native grasses that outcompete many weeds, protected significant sites. So there's a big connection there between the significance of fire and the connection it has to country, but then also it has the connection it has to traditional owners. So again, traditional owners need to be at the table whenever we're talking about this stuff, because we're the experts in this field, and we often, like I said, have that intimate knowledge of country and can see things through a cultural lens. So how fire fits into weed and pest management. So fire is often misunderstood. Fire is not the same as hazard reduction burning. So traditional fire it's patchy, it's cool, it's frequent. There's a purpose behind it, and it's seasonal. It's community led, so it's very empowering when you've got traditional owners out on country leading their stuff. So how fire helps with weeds, as I mentioned before, it really gives strength of grasses, which then can overpower the introduced stuff. So it removes seed banks of certain invasive grasses and empowers the natural seed banks that lie within the soil. It reduces biomasses that weeds rely on and encourages native grasses like kangaroo grass and wallaby grass, and it opens space for cultural burning patterns that maintain biodiversity. So there's a big connection there again with fire. We get fire back, we get the native grasses back, then we get the native animals that come back as well. So it's a really beautiful circle of life, but it needs to be regular fire regimes, and then over time we can see the benefits of healthy country. So fire is a cultural practice. So fire isn't just a tool, it's a relationship. It's a part of life. It's a way we do things. So fire it's used to protect sacred sites, maintain pathways, encourage food plants, supporting hunting practices. So when land care groups work with traditional owners of fire, they're not just burning fuel, they're participating in a cultural system of land stewardship. And when we do that, country is happy. It's happy. So when we've got people out on country, mob and allies alike working together in country, it has a positive ripple effect through country, which strengthens country. So how fire helps with pests, so it reduces habitats for rabbits and foxes, encourage native predators by restoring open woodlands. It improves visibility and access for pest control activities. Again, it gives that power back to the native and traditional custodians of the land. So some of the benefits of working together. So when land credit groups and traditional owner groups can collaborate, the outcomes are powerful. So here we've got the environmental benefits. So healthier native ecosystems, reduced weed spread, better soil health and more resilient landscapes. Cultural benefits, revitalisation of cultural practices, respect for country, opportunities for traditional owners to lead. So again, that's that empowerment and self-determination model, which is a model that we should always be striving for. And that's putting traditional owners in the driver's seat of their own success. And then community benefits of stronger partnerships, shared learning, more effective land management, and greater sense of belonging and responsibility. So with that, the more that we can come together and we can share and learn from each other, and the more we understand of our own backyard, the more we have that connection to it, and the more we can have that responsibility for caring for it. So the more we understand about it, then it gives us that sense of belonging and that connection to it, which makes us want to, it gives importance to what we all do. So in closing there, we've got a nice photo there of Uncle Al overseeing one of the many cultural burns that we've delivered. But so caring for country is not something that we do to the land, it's something we do with the land and with the people who have cared for it for thousands of years. So, fire is about the country, understanding country, applying fire at the right time. So by working with traditional owners, we're not just managing weeds and pests, we're restoring country. And to cap everything off, so healthy country equals healthy people. And so there's a direct relationship there between, country and people. So you might have heard a lot through welcoming countries and things like that, where you hear our elders talk about, looking after the land and rivers, and the land and rivers will look after you. And that is absolutely correct. So the more we can do together and, put love back into country, then it's going to have that positive, effects on people. It's going to have positive relationship effects on communities, which all comes back down to healthy country, healthy people, and then it has that positive ripple effect into people's well-being. But that's what I'm going to finish up with now. So thank you for the opportunity. I hope you've learned a little bit here tonight, and then I'll open it up now for questions.
Thanks, Johnny. I just want to invite also everyone here today presenting. So Lachlan, Michelle, Richard's also here. Even Sarah, if there's also any questions that you want to ask each other, please feel free to unmute and have a little chat here. While we might be thinking about something, I'll just read out a comment and also a little bit of a question from Gerhard. Not so much about partnerships, but more about how there's the idea, the value that country needs people, but that we live in a way these days that seems to be in an opposite direction to that. And his comment is there's so much to learn on country that can never be learned in the confines of the city, including fuel reduction burning. So I guess this is a bit of a comment / looking for some direction on how to get people back in country. Have you got anything to say about this, Johnny?
Yeah, that's spot on. One of the biggest lessons that I have learnt and what I share with others is to understand country, you've got to be out on country. And then the more, you're out on country, the more that, you'll see things differently. And that, country country tests us all. You can't just go out on country one time and expect to, see everything. Country hides things from you until they know, what you're made of and what your intentions are. And Richard could probably attest to this, probably, using, just say Mount Pilot as an example. The amount of times you go up there, I've been going up there for years, and you could go to the same spot, and then the next time you go up, you'll see something that you hadn't seen before. And that's, not by accident. That's country, holding back and, like I said, teaching you and showing you when the time is right. So I agree. That's my kids in the background
That's
running around.
okay.
But yeah, no, I totally agree with that. To learn country, you got to be out on country.
Thanks, Johnny. I do appreciate this is a time to be with family, so appreciate everyone's times today to be here, including everyone participating. Is there a list of so from Diana, for someone that wants to engage in fire-related activities, cultural burns, is there a list of Aboriginal land managers with experience in fire management that people can access? Or I guess this is different for every region, but
Yeah, I might throw to Richard for that one.
Can you hear me? Yes. Yep.
yes.
The best thing to do is to go to the traditional owners within your area and discuss that with them. And if they don't have the required answers, they might just go to their neighbours or seek that information out and do joint projects. But I think we have to appreciate that fire hasn't been in the landscape for a long time, and it's just starting to be reintroduced now. So it's not reasonable to think that every traditional owner group in Victoria is an expert in it. It's something that's developing.
Yeah, true. On fire again, this is probably for you, Richard and Johnny. How do you deal with the is there any red tape to work on roadsides? Do you actually work on roadsides? If you do, how do you do it?
You want me to take that one, Johnny?
Yeah, you can add that. You can take that one. I might chime in if I need to.
Right. We started burning in the northeast back around 2012, and we did it on private land. And the people who opened up their arms and their land were land care people, because we could walk out there, we could look at land, and we could design things and plan things very easily. Roadsides are Crown land, and that means going through government departments and getting permits, and you need a lot of planning and people involved. You have to shut roads down or have signs up, and it's very costly. So we, as a TO group in the northeast, we keep away from that, and we leave that up to CFAs. CFAs do a lot of that, and CFAs up here have noticed that burning at the right time of year has been very productive for native grasses. So there's a lot of benefits in it, but also the disadvantage is that we have a lot of phalaris up here, and when that burns, that's devastating. It's so hot that it kills natives, and if there's animals harbouring in roadside veg or hollows or whatever, it's not good.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's the reason why we stay away. It's easier and safer for us, and it builds, like Johnny was saying, those relationships with land care people. We teach them how to look after country.
Mm. And yeah, like on top of that, it's about being safe, as well. Roadsides, obviously, we need to be sure that it's safe for people. We don't want people getting injured. So it can happen. It just takes a longer time. But like Richard said, we try and steer away from that.
Yeah. There's definitely a much better understanding than about cultural burns than we used to have, even from CFA council. So I think things will continue to progress in the good way for country. through cultural burns. So, Johnny, I have a question for you. So we talked a lot about cultural burns as in a way of protecting native species and removing weeds and pests. But is there any other traditional methods to control, the pests and weeds that we see in the landscape today? Or do you work with other land care groups using other methods that are not just cultural burns? And how do you see those methods of control? Like, if, for example, herbicides or shooting or biocontrols, etc.
Yeah, fire is the main one. But yeah, we have worked with different land care groups over the years. But the most significant one, you can't beat having mob out on country full time, working, so we can monitor and keep on top of things. We prefer, yeah, there is the eradication method, but we've got to understand where possible that we've got that relationship with all the different animals and things like that as well. But fire and being present on country is probably the main ones, but I don't know if Richard can elaborate more on that as well.
All I can add to that, Anna, is that we're managing a wetland at the moment. It's got a lot of introduced weeds, thistles, etc. And the elders or the rangers who are managing that do use pesticide. It's not by choice. It's something we have to do because there's so many different introduced weeds and pasture grasses that fire alone won't fix it. And I think with most problems, there's not one thing that will fix everything. You have to have a multi-pronged attack.
Integrated approach. That's it.
Can
Thanks
I
for
add
your
something with
answer.
that too, Anna? Just with the herbicide usage, one thing we've done the last couple of years is to try and get land care groups to apply for funding to get their members the ACUP qualification, AQF3. So they've got that certificate and some education and training, I guess, so they can handle it correctly, store it correctly, transport it correctly. I guess, know to get the right chemical and the right mix ratios and how to read labels, all that sort of stuff. So I think in the last year we've had about 40 people get their ACUPs, and then they now sort of manage that work for the land care groups when they do any spraying programs.
Yeah, that's a good point. There are people involved.
Yep.
Yep. So anyone, there's no questions at the moment. Oh, there's again about schools for Johnny or Richard. Do you engage with any schools about looking after country?
Yeah, we do. To my mum in particular, she she goes into schools educating school groups around the significance of country and how we can all play a role in it. And it comes back down to that people having an understanding of where they are in place and the country that they're on and the significance of it. So then they can care for it and love it and understand it. So like the more that we understand about something, the better we can care for it. And I'll just say on top of that, we've created a book. It's around the protection of the long-necked turtles, the Nungria, in the Dodora language, and so that's a resource that's going to be going out and shared in schools. It was designed specifically for school groups to read and have that understanding of the significance of the waterways and how we can play a role in ensuring that we don't pollute the waterways, and then also how we care for country. So the waterways are healthy for our turtles to live in, but then also we need to understand, that foxes and things like that are the main threats too, the eggs and things like that. So it's about, yeah, we do. The short answer is yes, we do. We work with school groups as much as we can. So the more we can bring the young people along on the journey with us, the better off we're going to be in the future.
Yeah, thanks, John. So with the best approach, Johnny, so let's say I'm part of a land care group and I really want to run this project with the traditional owner. What is my best strategy to get a traditional owner involved in my project? Is it to go in person to your office and have a cup of tea, or is it an email enough, a phone call? How can we get your attention and
Yeah.
support?
Well, cup of tea for sure. And if you're going to meet with Uncle Al, Uncle Phil, or Mum, a nice bee sting from one of the bakeries definitely helps. It's been proven to increase your relationship status.
Yeah.
But look, yeah, and this is across the board, it's about involving traditional owners from the start, from the very start. So even from the design concept, when you're thinking about it, it's about that engagement early on in the process, and not just getting things up and then going, oh yep, now we'll go and speak to a traditional owner group or traditional owners once things have already been put in place, because then they will, well, one, they're not involved from the start, so they won't understand the full purpose of it. So bringing them along on the journey from the start, but prior to that, like I'm touched on earlier, is building that relationship. So going to traditional owner groups and supporting them when you don't want anything from them. And that's the biggest key and the best way to build relationships, so that, there's plenty of ways you can support traditional owner groups. So, attending events that they hold, working side by side like many of you do, so that when the time comes, when there is a project that you might want to work on, they've already got that relationship from you, they understand you, and they know that you're genuine. So a lot of people, from my experience, I've worked in local government, state government, I've worked at grassroots level, is a lot of organisations and a lot of people, they only come and want to speak to blackfellas when they want something from them. And then
Yeah.
And if you can understand that, if you've got this great idea, you're not the first person to come to the community or traditional owner groups with a great idea. But it goes back to that, bringing them along on the journey, having a relationship with them outside of when you want something from them, and then that'll have, positive impact on project success into the future.
Yeah. And I guess we have to remember these things are free. We don't need any money of grant funding to go and reach out and talk about common issues or common views.
Right.
So it's just taking that time to go and connect. I think that is really important. I think it's a lesson from today. If we want to have meaningful partnerships and engagement, we need to start early without bigger interest or motivator that is often happens with land care groups. Very often that we have funding is not readily available, and when there's an opportunity that comes up, we apply for that funding, and then we have to engage.
Yeah, it's about having those open and honest and transparent conversations as well. Don't assume that, that people are going to understand or know what you're talking about. But also then it's about that follow-up as well, like a lot of the time I've seen people, they come and they speak to community, oh, we want to deliver this project. They get all the information and they go and deliver the project, and then you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
So, it's about, sharing in that journey once the project's delivered, going back and then, sharing how that project has had an impact on whatever you were trying to achieve. And then, then from there, it's about, working together on the next one.
Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking here, I've got a question from Cody about other examples of biocontrol and non-herbicide treatment like weed steamers used in conjunction with fire. Is there anything that you've done that did not involve herbicides to control? I know that, I mean, this it's not to do with fire, but you did have a very exciting project with the turtles and the way you dealt with the foxes. We did cover this in a previous webinar, but there was quite, was a deterrent used to keep foxes away from those eggs. Do you want to talk a little bit about it, either Richard or Johnny?
Yeah, I'll give that one to Richard.
Thank you, Johnny. As far as I know, fire is our main tool. It's always been the main tool, and it was adapted for this environment pre-colonisation. So modern methods are adapted as we try and deal with modern weeds and all that kind of thing. Steamers and all that, no, we haven't explored that yet. We're very much about reconnecting with traditional practice and building that knowledge so we can use that in land management. So it just from our Johnny's in our corporation, that's our focus at the moment, and passing that knowledge on to the next generation and sharing it with thank you, obviously.
All right, I think we're about to wrap up for today. I'd like to put you all in the spot tonight. This is something I don't usually do, but I think we've got a really good panel here to do that. So as a wrap up, Lachlan, would you like to give your very quick overview of tonight's and what maybe something you've learned or a vision you might have for the future of land care and how to become more connected?
Well, I see there's a lot of hope in the room, and from what I've heard tonight from the other presenters, and what can I do? I guess I just encourage people to like stick with land care. To probably the one thing I'd say that I'm seeing more and more important is to have that succession planning for the group, because we're losing our volunteer base, so it's really important. I think the connection with our traditional owner groups is another big area we can everyone can make an effort to step into, and really thank Johnny and Richard for sort of sharing their expertise and knowledge around that tonight and what's required. I know I'm going to go back to our little organisation and our network and have a chat with them about looking at sustained relationships so we can get involved with long-term projects and go and have the cup of tea with them. Yeah, I think that's probably what I've learned out of tonight.
Thanks, Lachlan. What about you, Michelle? Do you want to have a couple of words?
Yeah, a couple of words. Along the lines of what Johnny was saying, I think the cup of tea idea, and it doesn't have to be a cup of tea, but that face-to-face contact, that opportunity to have a discussion and not just a sort of short impersonal email or that sort of thing. I think that's one of the amazing things. One of our groups held an event about a month ago, and it was essentially just to reconnect with their own members. But we put their flyer out there to all the other groups, and more than half the people that turned up came from other groups. So there's just this real interest, and it was a social event. It wasn't necessarily about planting trees or learning about something. It was a social event, and they just wanted to get together and chat. And I think that's one of the things that is coming back through all the questioning and surveys that we do with our members, is that personal interaction.
Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. What about you, Johnny?
No, I just want to echo what Michelle has said. That significance of connection and, just seeing her people. I remember, going to conferences and professional development days and things like that. And, they've got the structure, the formalities, this is what's happening. But it was actually after that, the event or after the meeting, yarning to someone in the car park or yarning to someone, having a cup of tea afterwards, is where I got the most out of it, because people can, open up more and have, give you their experience. And so, yeah, I remember one of the uncles up around Newcastle way, he had a company and he employed 2 full-time cup of tea drinkers. And that was just to go around to, so they could get all the inside scoop about what was going on, in community. And so he was always in the know. So, yeah. But no,
That's
look,
fun.
and I think everything that I've learned through the presentations tonight is around that relationship. So relationships are key to, whatever success we want to have into the future.
Thanks, Johnny. I'd like to see that in the job description. Professional cup tea drinker. Yeah. All right, Richard, do you want to wrap up?
The only thing I
Last
was,
final words.
yeah, I just see that weeds are devastating to the environment, to the native species, native plants. They add to fuel loads, and the more we can address that, it's better. The healthier the environment will be, the birds and all that. Sorry, I've got a cat coming in. Yeah, that's all I want to say.
Thanks, Richard. All right, so time to finish up for today. So I'd like to thank everyone for showing up, all the participants, all the speakers tonight, to Sarah for coming to help, Richard, Michelle, Johnny, and Lachlan. Really appreciate your time for tonight's webinar.